Today we have a new tank coming to Supertest, the third Polish tank destroyer, and it looks like it's going to be the Polish brother of the WC-111 GFT. Please welcome a tank which I most likely won't be able to pronounce, called the SDP 60 Gonkiewicza. I'm just going to call it Gonk or Gronk. I don't know. Sorry, Polish guys. Why are your names hard? Now, this tank is, just judging from the stats, it looks tier for tier loads better than the tier 10. Yes, it does not have as good as it of a DPM as the tier 10, but other than that, you lose a little bit of HP per turn ratio, a little bit of top speed, but other than that, the armor on paper is only 10 millimeters less. You know, and it's like, it technically has, in my opinion at least, better armor profile when we look at here, with this having those angled sides making it harder to side scrape. And yes, the accuracy is a little bit better, the aim time is a little bit better, but that's about it. You have the same gun. You literally have the same gun. And the gun is the thing where, once again, those Polish TDs, at least from tier 8 onwards, are very special. Because it looks like Wargaming wants to address the problem with the typical play, which is like, ook, I see triangle. That means I got a camp bush at the back of the map. No, with those tanks, if you do that, you're going to hamper yourself very, very heavily as a tank destroyer. Now, to demonstrate that a little bit more, I quickly just prepared this right here, which allows us to have a look at those three TDs on this side and the Gonk on the other side. And the main thing is, again, the main gimmick of those tanks are those star trade shells, which means they have super high velocity, however, they have a damage drop off over distance. At 50 meters or less, you have 800 damage, beating all of these TDs straight out of the water, because the maximum is with the WZ and the T30 at 750, then we go to 650 of the Hori, and then we just have 550 of the object 263. However, at 275 meters, and the drop-off is linear, and you apparently will also get an UI indication how much the damage will roughly be, or how much the damage will be at that distance, is going to be 550. So now we are suddenly on the range of the object 263. And at 500 meters, it's 300. And that is kinda pathetic, if you ask me. But I have to say, when we now look, or start to look at the DPM, with 15 seconds reload, the 500 damage, the 800 damage rounds will have a DPM of 3,200. And yes, that is absurd. You can see it is 700 more than both the Hori and the WZ, both of those tanks being also close range TDs. It is over 1,050 damage more than the object 263 or the T30. With the T30 technically also being in your face TD, but more of a hold down heavy in that regard. The 263 also being with it being Stalin's shoe, you know, it works. But at 275, and I have to say 275 meters, it's not like a distance where I have to say, oh my god, like that is so far away. That is still normal range for World of Tanks engagement, depending on what map you are at, especially also against heavy sometimes. You start to drop to 2,200 average damage. And you can see now you're already below than what the WZ and the Hori has. But you're still a little bit better than Object 263. But please don't snipe with this tank, because currently this tank, and again, this is subject to change, would have 1,200 DPM at 500 meters. That is a bigus yikes. That also means like maps like Progorovka, Malinovka, not necessarily thanks to the hill. But on Progorovka, you're going to struggle quite a bit. Maybe you're going to play a little bit like a heavy tank on the middle ridge, left-hand side, or right-hand side on the trail tracks, where you can either shoot on the hill, but that would be bad because you lose DPM, and maybe shoot in the face of some TDs or heavy tanks in front of you with the bushes. So, that is fairly interesting. 290 base pen, that is pretty flawless, that's really, really good. And 320 gold pen, the same values as the tier 9, the tier 10 vehicle. Now, obviously, it's not getting even close to what the WZ has to offer because for some reason it almost has 400 millimeters of pen on tier 9 because it's the same gun as the tier 10 vehicle. That's a little bit of a funny moment, you know, you all have to laugh now in the comment section. But the pen is, for example, the same as the T30, which is obviously kind of odd when you compare it to something like the E4, which has 375 millimeters of penetration. You know, a little bit unlucky for our tank destroyers from the Polish tech tree. Also, can we talk about how this one has 1100 HE damage, while our Neo-Polish contesters are all stuck at 800. Feels a little bit odd. Like, why not bump it to 900? Could be fun. Maybe it's a limitation of the game engine, who knows? But let's go back a little bit now to this comparison. The gun handling is pretty meh. 2.7 seconds of aim time. It's actually not the worst, but it's also not that good. Accuracy 0.38. You know, it's not bad like those two, but it's also not good really. So yeah, 7 degrees of gun depression, workable. It's the same as the Hori. It's 1 degree better than the WZ. T30, forget about it. That thing is still great. And Object 263, we don't talk about it. It's we already talked about it in Mother Russia. Depression doesn't get you. Now, the main issue the Gonk will have is this. The traverse limits left and right are -5 degrees. For the people which already played the Hori, you'll notice that 10 degrees to the left and to the right are already fairly annoying. With the Gonk having half of that, that will be one narrow-sighted TD. This could be an issue. However, I have a little bit of a gut feeling. We don't know yet what the soft stats of this tank will be. But with its decent mobility, we'll get to that in just a second, decent hull traverse speed, and mediocre aim time, chances are this thing will have pretty good accuracy on the move. Because otherwise, imagine, you're trying to 1v1 a person, as Wargaming plans you to do, head on, face to face, in a valley, for example, because we love World of Corridor. I don't know, let's say Pearl River, heavy clash rate. You both hold down, driving forth and back, having to wiggle around, especially if this tank will be easier, as with the tier 10, because the tier 10 has those angle plates. Now, what does that mean? If those angles are this poor, it means you have to move your hull a lot. And this could be very frustrating if the gun handling is poor. But I don't know, I just feel like Wargaming would be odd to also give you bad gun handling, because then it just means you can't really do anything at all. But it also helps those tanks to be sold as poor snipers, you know, even though they have insane and absurd shell velocity. Speaking of said shell velocity, this might be actually really good to fight in close range, because that way shells don't usually arch, even at small distances, and they are like a hit skin weapon. They just, you shoot, bam, immediately in the face of the enemy. Hopefully the cupola. We already talked about the mobility, and the mobility is great. 42 kph, 42 is always the number, and 15 kph in reverse. Yes, it's not as good as the 263, but it straight up murders all those tanks, even with its HP to ton ratio of 15.6. With a turbo charger, you get off like 47 and 18, if I have it correct in my mind, 47, 19 roughly. That is fairly mobile. That is really mobile, and that will help this tank get into positions not too fast, but also not too slow. Like, you will be mostly slightly faster than your typical heavy, and you will be slower than your typical heavium, like a 277 WZ 1115A, you know. But that is a-okay. Survivability is all the same when it comes to hit points. Yes, the T30 sucks. And armor is 190 millimeters on the front, 75 on the side, 55 on the rear, so don't get hit by an APR or RD. And view range sucks. Looks like those Polish people drank too much pivo, so they have issues seeing anything at all out of this tank. Now, I have to say this tank, like, I still try to figure out what is Wargaming's plan with these tanks. Like, obviously the plan is right there. It's even basically spelled out with this shell damage mechanic. Get close, get personal, go in a fight, you know. However, the main problem is World of Tanks battles usually are not this one-dimensional where you can always say, oh, a heavy always has to go straight into somebody's face. Like, this might be a little bit of a controversial topic, especially after they changed the map a little bit, but Redshire, the team which has to drive up through the water up to the Zeppelin, usually always is quite a bit in a disadvantage. So when you, for example, look at somebody like Skill or Ducky, they sometimes tend to say, you know what, if only one or maximum two of my allied heavies are going there, I don't go. There's no point in me to also die against a team which has potentially 5 or 6 people there. Especially, again, back in the days, you lose damage when you get shot in the side from the middle. So, it also means that a good player would see this, oh, we have not a lot of people going there, so I might just camp a little bit further at the back. Meaning that with the Gonk, you really cut down your DPM. Yes, it is not as bad. Again, 300 roughly meters, which is something like this distance. 2200 DPM, which is almost the same what the others have. But as soon as you go further, you really castrate your DPM. And again, I understand that this is the idea of those TDs, but some situations you are forced to play from quite a far distance. So my question is just like, then why do you introduce such a mechanic regardless? Why wasn't it enough for them to have very high shell velocity, but also maybe, I don't know, lower damage, you know, than the other TDs? I don't know, like just 600 flat. On one hand, I kind of like the idea, but on the other hand, I'm a little bit skeptical. You know, this is what I want to say. I know sometimes words are hard. When you also look at the armor profile, I believe that it looks fairly similar from what the VZ would gift us. And obviously, if you play against itself, which has 290 pin, the armor is not going to really hold up. But 260 effective, not too bad. If you go hold down, maybe even over angle a tiny bit. Yeah, 280, 270, pretty decent. But again, the good thing is the Gonk won't have the issue of you trying to side scrape. You can see we can, let's say we can side scrape like this. This is completely green, while this in the back is completely ricochet. This will also happen for this thing where the side armor will, the lower side armor will most likely be the worst offender of this poor armor. But you most likely will have a weak spot over here, obviously part of the cupola. Most likely this might even be 75 millimeters. Interesting. Well, we'll see. Now, let me know in the comment section below what you think about those tanks. And with that, I believe this video is over. And I hope I can go back to doing such videos again. Cheers and good luck.